I never would have thought that I'd be making this video even like a week ago, because even a week ago, the general consensus and thoughts of the community, like generally speaking, towards Drew McIntyre, was by and large overwhelmingly positive. Like on Twitter especially, like this is like the main place I go for like, you know, gauging opinions and whatnot. On Twitter really, and just the wrestling community in general, the consensus with Drew McIntyre was overwhelmingly positive. And then The Miz cashed in his Money in the Bank at the Elimination Chamber, and ever since then, ever since Mike The Miz Mizanin became WWE Champion, I've seen a lot more Drew McIntyre slander. Now, that's not to say that Drew McIntyre doesn't have a lot of fans still, and don't get it twisted for a second. Drew McIntyre still has a bunch of fans, a bunch of guys who love Drew McIntyre, and if you're one of those people, hell, I'm one of those people. Those people, that's awesome. But really, the shift I've seen in the community in the past couple of days since the Chamber has been really interesting to me, because when it comes to Drew and really like top WWE babyfaces, usually this kind of thing happens just naturally. Like babyfaces in WWE, I talked all about this in my Why WWE Babyfaces Suck video last November. Really, when it comes to babyfaces in WWE, you have a conundrum where, as good as you can book these babyfaces, like Drew McIntyre by and large has been booked pretty well, generally speaking, since like the beginning of 2020. But just in general, when you have a top babyface, naturally fan fatigue is gonna surface. Okay, when Drew McIntyre is winning feud after feud after feud for over a year, naturally that whole kind of fatigue from fans is going to come in. And most of that fatigue, like, we didn't really see up until The Miz cashed in. And then it seemed like a bunch of the wrestling community, just, you know, a bunch of the community who'd thought of Drew McIntyre in a fairly good light, or had, you know, kind of held in their opinions of Drew, most of these people just took a dump on Drew after The Miz became champion. Drew McIntyre's boring. He's stale. Hell, I'm sick of seeing him win every match. Scottish Cena. Oh, this is Cena 2.0. This is Roman Reigns 2.0. This guy just wins every match. I'm so glad he's not champion anymore. Keep him away from the championship for a short while or a long while. Keep him away from the title. That's the kind of stuff I saw in bulk on Twitter for the past few days. I've seen a very anti-Drew McIntyre type deal on Twitter. And to be fair, for every two people I've seen say Drew McIntyre, you know, I'm sick of him, I'm bored of him, I've seen like two people say I'm a fan. So it's now like an even split, where before Elimination Chamber, to me at least, from what I've gauged, it seemed like a 75 to 85% pro Drew McIntyre, and then like a 15 to 25% are like kind of against him, or not really a fan, or like neutral. But now it really does seem like a 50-50 in the community. Like, because of McIntyre losing the title and ending his second reign the way it has, now people are just like, I don't want to see McIntyre win the belt for a third time in a year. Like, is there a need to just give him back the title belt? And really, this is the kind of thing Cena faced for like much of his decade-long run as the top guy. Because for much of the Super Cena reign, it was very similar to this. It was, you'd have Cena win near enough every feud. Cena would just win the feud, a heel would challenge him, they'd, you know, have one pay-per-view match, Cena would win, they'd have a second pay-per-view match, Cena would win, and then that'd be the feud. And that's really that kind of top babyface formula that WWE really fell into. And then that Super Cena thing, just the character, hustle, loyalty, and respect to nation, I rise above hate, all that kind of stuff drove away the 18 to 49 male audience, or like most of them. And then once they got driven away, then they started appealing to families, and then kids in the families hit their teenage years and stopped watching WWE because it wasn't cool, and now we're left with 1.7 million viewers of Raw. So yeah, that's the whole kind of downward spiral of WWE. That's not the point of the video. The point of the video is that WWE, with top baby faces, so Cena, then Reigns, now McIntyre, they face this problem where they get stale really quickly. Now, I want to give credit to Drew, because one of the things that I was very worried about this time a year ago was that Drew McIntyre would win the WWE Championship, and he'd experience a similar fate to that of Seth Rollins with the Universal title in 2019, or Kofi Kingston with the WWE title in 2019. That's where they win the title. It's this big, oh my god, they've won the title. And then within a month to 6 weeks, they're stale. So, in that regard, Drew McIntyre going basically a year before the fans really kind of start to turn on him, that's a big success for Drew, because in this day and age of social media, people are so quick to turn on anything. And we saw that with Seth Rollins, we saw that with Kofi Kingston. Granted, both those guys aren't nearly as legitimate as Drew McIntyre, just in a physical sense and just as a character sense, but nonetheless, Drew McIntyre stayed, I wouldn't say relevant, but I'd say, compelling, interesting, legitimate, like enticing to see what he has to do in his feud for the better part of the year. Like, granted, he's on Raw, so naturally the show is going to be boring. He's going to do his best through bad material, but nonetheless, Drew stayed relevant and interesting for basically a year, whereas Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston could barely do that for like 6 weeks. So Drew, he's been a success so far. Where they go from here is big, because considering this aforementioned shift in just general fan opinion towards Drew, as I mentioned before, it went from a 75 to 85% overwhelmingly positive feeling to Drew. Now it seems 50-50. Like, that's the kind of thing I'm seeing on social media and the wrestling community. Now it seems like a near enough an even split with Drew. So where you go from here is critical. If at WrestleMania they go down the route of just Drew McIntyre winning back the WWE Championship, that way he's had 3 reigns within the course of 1 year, and then you're really trying to stat pad the reigns of Drew. If you go down that avenue, and then we go into the guts of 2021 with another McIntyre WWE title reign, and Monday Night Raw is merely just Drew McIntyre beating heels month after month after month after month, if that's the direction you're going, really, I'm gonna say it now, I'll be genuinely surprised if 4 to 6 months from now McIntyre's seen in like a positive light. Because if you give Drew McIntyre a 3rd title reign, give us 4 to 6 more months of McIntyre just squashing heel after heel, fans are really gonna fatigue. Because at the moment, when Miz won the title at the Chamber, you saw just this kind of outpouring of just, fatigue towards McIntyre. This outpouring of people who were like, oh yeah, he's had 2 reigns, neither of them were incredible. Like, the first one was good, second one was meh. I'm sick of Drew McIntyre, he's stale, we've seen enough of Drew, we've seen Drew for a year, time for something new, time for something fresh. Miz is new, Miz is fresh. Well, even though he's not really, but in the context of the WWE title picture of late, Miz is new, Miz is fresh, Lashley is fresh, Lashley's interesting. Like, this is the kind of thing we're seeing. So, if WWE are dumb enough to just give McIntyre back the title within the next, month, I mean, they'll probably do it because it's Drew McIntyre, but is that really going to get the best of feedback from the community? Like, granted, as I said earlier in the video, a lot of people will enjoy that, a lot of people will like that, and I think that's cool. But personally speaking, I think for the moment, ideally what they do is Lashley beats The Miz next week on Raw to win the title. Then after the match, Bobby Lashley is attacked by Brock Lesnar. Then you do Lashley versus Lesnar at WrestleMania for the WWE title. That main event's night 1, Edge reigns main event's night 2. Happy ending. But this is WWE, so more than likely what they're going to do, Drew McIntyre is going to attack The Miz or Lashley during the match. It's going to be a no contest. We'll get a triple threat at Fastlane. Lashley will win the triple threat. Then Lashley has a 3-week reign. McIntyre beats Lashley at WrestleMania. McIntyre's a 3-time champion. So that's probably what they're going to do. I'll say it now. If McIntyre causes a no contest in that match next week, I'm probably going to be pissed. Like, I just want Lashley to win the title, dude. Is that too much to ask for? Bobby Lashley, the crap he's gone through on WWE TV, I mean, I swear, Lashley should be champion next week. Lashley needs to beat The Miz. Will he? No, it'll be a DQ finish, but God, I want Lashley to win. So yeah, that's basically been the video. In summary, in conclusion, Drew McIntyre has had a pretty generally good run over the course of the past year and a bit. Where they go from here is going to be pivotal because, as I mentioned, the general consensus surrounding Drew has shifted from overwhelmingly positive to near enough an even split. So in that regard, where they go from here is big. if you just give Drew back the title and have 6 more months of Drew squashing heels, that's going to shift towards being, negative. It's going to shift towards being the kind of fan reception Seth Rollins got in 2019. And you really don't want that, because Drew McIntyre is so much better than Seth Rollins as far as the top guy. So, with that being said, book Drew well, book your top babyface well. Don't shoot him in the head by having him do some horrible 9-month-long title reign again. Like, you can sense that Drew's getting a little bit stale, at least in my opinion. So book him well, don't ruin him, go from there. So yeah, that's been the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have, sure like, comment, subscribe, drill. See ya.